John's world went dark as he slowly regained consciousness. The last thing he remembered was riding his motorcycle down a winding mountain road. Now, he found himself in a confined space, surrounded by an eerie silence. As his senses sharpened, a horrifying realization dawned on him: he was in a coffin, buried alive. Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but John forced himself to remain calm. He knew that his survival depended on keeping a clear head. As he lay there, trying to piece together what had happened, fragments of memory began to surface. There had been an accident, a terrible crash that had left him unconscious and barely clinging to life. The doctors must have mistaken his deep coma for death. John's first instinct was to cry out for help, but he quickly realized the futility of such an action. No one would hear him 6 feet underground. Instead, he focused on assessing his situation. The coffin was sturdy, but not airtight. This meant he had a limited supply of oxygen, but it also gave him hope. If he could find a way to signal his presence or create an opening, he might have a chance at survival. As the hours ticked by, John's mind raced with possible escape plans. He remembered reading about a buried alive case where the victim had used his belt buckle to scratch through the wood. With trembling hands, John removed his belt and began the painstaking process of trying to scrape away at the coffin lid. The work was slow and exhausting, but it gave him a sense of purpose and kept the creeping despair at bay. Time seemed to lose all meaning in the darkness. John alternated between periods of frantic activity and forced rest, knowing he needed to conserve his energy and oxygen. He thought of his family, his friends, and all the things he had left unsaid. The possibility that he might never see them again fueled his determination to survive. As he worked, John made a startling discovery. His phone was still in his pocket, miraculously undamaged from the accident. Although there was no signal underground, the device provided him with a source of light and a way to track the passing time. He rationed the battery life carefully, using it only when absolutely necessary. On what he estimated to be the second day, John's efforts finally yielded results. He had managed to create a small hole in the coffin lid. The rush of fresh air was both a blessing and a curse. While it provided him with much-needed oxygen, it also brought with it loose soil that threatened to fill his confined space. Undeterred, John continued to work at enlarging the hole. He tore strips from his clothing to create a makeshift filter, placing it over his nose and mouth to prevent inhaling the dirt. The work was grueling, and his hands were raw and bleeding, but the prospect of freedom drove him onward. As the third day dawned, John's situation grew increasingly desperate. His water supply, limited to the contents of a small flask that had been buried with him, was nearly exhausted. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, and his muscles ached from the confined space and constant exertion. But he refused to give up. Using his phone's flashlight, John examined the progress he had made. The hole was now large enough for him to potentially squeeze through, but he knew that doing so carried enormous risks. The loose soil could easily collapse, burying him alive in a much more final way. Yet, he realized that staying put was no longer an option. His oxygen supply was dwindling, and with it, his chances of survival. Gathering every ounce of courage and strength he had left, John began the arduous process of digging upward. He used his hands to scoop away the dirt, creating a narrow tunnel above him. The work was slow and terrifying. Several times, he felt the soil shifting around him, threatening to cave in. But he pressed on, driven by an primal urge to live. After what seemed like an eternity, John's hand broke through the surface. The feeling of cool air on his skin was indescribable. With renewed vigor, he widened the hole and slowly pulled himself out of the ground. As he emerged, gasping and trembling, into the cemetery, he was met with the astonished stares of a group of mourners gathered at a nearby grave. The scene that followed was one of chaos and disbelief. Paramedics were called, and John was rushed to the hospital. News of his miraculous survival spread quickly, captivating the nation. Doctors were amazed at his physical resilience and mental fortitude. The story of the man who refused to accept death, who clawed his way back to the world of the living, became an inspiration to many. As John recovered in the hospital, surrounded by his overjoyed family and friends, he reflected on his harrowing experience. The ordeal had given him a new perspective on life and the preciousness of every moment. He vowed to make the most of his second chance, to live with purpose and appreciation for the simple joys he had once taken for granted. In the weeks that followed, John's story sparked discussions about medical practices and the need for more stringent protocols to prevent such horrific mistakes. He used his newfound platform to advocate for changes in the system, determined to ensure that no one else would ever have to endure what he had gone through. The experience had changed John in profound ways. He found himself more patient, more compassionate, and more willing to embrace life's challenges. The memory of those 3 days underground would always be with him, a reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the will to survive against all odds. As he stood at the podium, sharing his story with a captivated audience, John's voice rang out clear and strong. "Life is a gift," he said, "one that can be taken away in an instant. But it's also something worth fighting for, with every fiber of your being. Never give up, never lose hope, because you never know what miracles await you on the other side of darkness." John's journey back to normalcy was far from easy. The physical toll of his ordeal left him weakened and in need of extensive rehabilitation. His muscles, atrophied from days of confinement, required weeks of physical therapy to regain their strength. The psychological impact was even more profound. Night terrors plagued his sleep, vivid flashbacks of being trapped underground jolting him awake in cold sweats. Despite these challenges, John approached his recovery with the same determination that had kept him alive in that coffin. He worked tirelessly with therapists, both physical and mental, to overcome the trauma. Slowly but surely, he began to reclaim his life. As news of John's incredible survival spread, he found himself thrust into the public eye. Media outlets clamored for interviews, eager to share his tale of resilience with the world. At first, John was hesitant, overwhelmed by the attention. But as he began to share his story, he realized the powerful impact it had on others. People facing their own struggles found hope and inspiration in his words. One particularly touching moment came when John received a letter from a young girl battling cancer. She wrote about how his story had given her the courage to keep fighting, to never give up even when things seemed darkest. Moved by her words, John decided to visit her in the hospital. That visit was the first of many, as John began dedicating much of his time to speaking with patients facing life-threatening illnesses, sharing his experience and offering encouragement. As months passed, John's story took on a life of its own. Books were written, documentaries filmed, all attempting to capture the essence of his incredible tale. John participated in these projects, seeing them as opportunities to spread his message of hope and resilience. But he was careful not to let the attention go to his head. He remained grounded, focused on using his platform to make a real difference in the world. One area where John became particularly passionate was in advocating for reforms in the medical industry. He worked tirelessly with lawmakers and medical professionals to implement new protocols for confirming death and handling burials. His efforts led to the passage of John's Law in several states, requiring multiple independent verifications before a death certificate could be issued. But John's activism didn't stop there. His brush with death had given him a new appreciation for the fragility of life and the importance of organ donation. He became a vocal advocate for organ donation programs, sharing how his own near-death experience had shown him the precious nature of every heartbeat, every breath. His campaigns led to a significant increase in registered organ donors across the country. As the years went by, John's life took on new dimensions. He fell in love with Sarah, one of the nurses who had cared for him during his recovery. Their shared experience of his trauma created a deep bond between them, and they married in a ceremony that celebrated life and second chances. Together, they started a family, with John cherishing every moment of fatherhood in a way he might not have before his ordeal. John's career also took an unexpected turn. Drawing on his experience, he began training search and rescue teams, teaching them techniques for staying calm and focused in extreme situations. His classes became renowned for their practical and psychological insights, drawing participants from around the world. On the 5th anniversary of his rescue, John organized a unique event. He invited survivors of near-death experiences from across the globe to gather and share their stories. The conference became a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, with attendees leaving inspired and connected by their shared experiences. As he stood on the stage, looking out at the sea of faces, each with their own tale of survival, John felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He realized that his ordeal, as terrible as it had been, had given him a gift, the ability to touch lives, to inspire hope, and to make a real difference in the world. In quiet moments, John would sometimes reflect on those 3 days underground. The memory no longer filled him with terror, but rather with a sense of awe at his own strength and the mysterious workings of fate. He had gone into that coffin as one man and emerged as another, stronger, more compassionate, and with a deep appreciation for the preciousness of each moment. As he concluded his speech at the conference, John's words resonated through the hall: "We are all buried alive in some way, by our fears, our doubts, our past. But we all have within us the power to dig ourselves out, to reach for the light. Life will test us, it will try to break us, but it's in those moments of darkness that we discover our true strength. Remember, as long as you're breathing, there's hope. And where there's hope, there are endless possibilities." The applause that followed was thunderous, but for John, the real reward was in the eyes of those listening, eyes that now shone with renewed determination and hope. He knew that his story would continue to inspire long after he was gone, a legacy of resilience and the indomitable human spirit. As he left the stage, hand in hand with Sarah, John felt a profound sense of gratitude. For every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of this precious life he had fought so hard to reclaim. And he vowed to continue living each day to its fullest, honoring the second chance he had been given and inspiring others to do the same. As the years passed, John's influence continued to grow, touching lives in ways he never could have imagined during those dark days underground. His story became a beacon of hope, inspiring people across the globe to persevere in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. One particularly impactful project emerged when John partnered with a virtual reality company to create an immersive experience based on his ordeal. The simulation, while intense, was designed as a therapeutic tool to help people facing claustrophobia and anxiety disorders. Users could experience a controlled version of confinement, learning coping techniques and building mental resilience. The program proved remarkably effective, with many participants reporting significant improvements in their ability to manage stress and panic. John's work also led him to unexpected places. He was invited to speak at space agencies, sharing insights on maintaining psychological well-being in confined spaces, knowledge that proved valuable for astronauts preparing for long-duration missions. His techniques for managing limited resources and staying mentally sharp under extreme stress became part of the training regimen for elite military units and emergency responders worldwide. As his children grew, John made sure to instill in them the lessons he had learned. He taught them the value of perseverance, the importance of hope, and the power of the human spirit. Family camping trips became opportunities to teach survival skills, not out of fear, but as a way to build confidence and self-reliance. His children grew up with a unique perspective on life, appreciating its fragility while embracing its possibilities. John's advocacy work continued to evolve. He became increasingly involved in efforts to reform the funeral industry, pushing for more sustainable and environmentally friendly burial practices. His experience had given him a unique perspective on the rituals surrounding death, and he worked to promote options that celebrated life while respecting the earth. In his 50th year, John faced a new challenge when he was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. The irony wasn't lost on him. After surviving being buried alive, he now faced a battle within his own body. But John approached this new ordeal with the same determination that had seen him through his previous trials. He underwent treatment, using the opportunity to connect with fellow patients and bring hope to the oncology ward. During his treatment, John began writing his memoir. The process was cathartic, allowing him to revisit his experiences and reflect on the journey that had brought him to this point. The book, when published, became an instant bestseller, its raw honesty and message of resilience resonating with readers around the world. As he recovered, John's brush with mortality sparked a new passion project. He began working with architects and city planners to design healing spaces in urban environments. These were areas specifically created to provide moments of peace and reflection in bustling cities. The project gained traction, with several major metropolitan areas implementing John's designs in parks and public spaces. On the 20th anniversary of his rescue, John organized a global event called Celebration of Life Day. The initiative encouraged people worldwide to take a day to appreciate the gift of being alive, to connect with loved ones, and to perform acts of kindness. The event went viral, with millions participating and sharing their experiences on social media. It became an annual tradition, a day when people paused to reflect on the preciousness of life and the importance of human connection. John's impact extended into the realm of education as well. He worked with curriculum developers to create a program for schools that taught emotional resilience and practical life skills. The course, which included lessons on mindfulness, problem-solving, and basic survival techniques, was adopted by schools across the country, helping to equip a new generation with the tools to face life's challenges. As he entered his 60s, John showed no signs of slowing down. He embarked on a world tour, visiting countries where natural disasters and conflicts had left communities traumatized. In refugee camps and disaster zones, he shared his story and conducted workshops, providing tools for psychological recovery and rebuilding. His visits often marked turning points for these communities, injecting hope and catalyzing efforts to rebuild. John's work caught the attention of the United Nations, which appointed him as a special envoy for resilience and disaster recovery. In this role, he worked to implement programs that not only provided immediate aid in crisis situations, but also focused on long-term psychological recovery and community rebuilding. As his 70th birthday approached, John reflected on the incredible journey his life had taken. From the darkness of that coffin to the global stage, he had transformed a nightmare into a force for good in the world. He had touched countless lives, inspired millions, and left a lasting impact on how society approaches challenges and values life. To mark this milestone, John decided to return to the cemetery where he had been buried. Standing at the site, now marked with a memorial plaque telling his story, he was struck by a profound sense of gratitude. He thought of all the lives he'd intersected with, the changes he'd helped bring about, and the love he'd shared with his family and friends. As he stood there, a young reporter approached him for an interview. "After all these years," she asked, "what's the most important lesson you've learned?" John smiled, his eyes twinkling with the wisdom of his experiences. "Life," he said, "is not about avoiding the darkness. It's about finding the light within ourselves, even in the darkest of places. Every challenge, every setback, every moment of despair is an opportunity to dig deeper, to discover strengths we never knew we had. And most importantly, to reach out and lift others up along the way." As the sun set on the cemetery, casting long shadows across the gravestones, John felt a deep sense of peace. He had not merely survived, he had truly lived. And through his life, he had helped countless others to do the same. The boy who had clawed his way out of a grave had become a man who had taught the world the true meaning of being alive. As John entered his 8th decade, his influence continued to grow, transcending borders and generations. His story had become a modern-day parable, taught in schools and universities as a testament to human resilience and the power of hope. The John Williams Foundation, established on his 75th birthday, became a global force for positive change. The foundation focused on 3 main areas: disaster resilience, mental health support, and innovative education. It funded research into new technologies for early warning systems in natural disasters, established a network of trauma recovery centers in conflict zones, and developed cutting-edge educational programs that blended emotional intelligence with practical life skills. One of the Foundation's most impactful initiatives was the Second Chance Scholarship. This program identified individuals who had overcome extreme adversity and provided them with full funding for higher education or vocational training. The scholars, chosen from around the world, became known as Williams Warriors, going on to become leaders in their fields and powerful advocates for resilience and social change. John's influence extended into the realm of popular culture as well. A critically acclaimed film based on his life story swept the Academy Awards, with the actor portraying John delivering a powerful acceptance speech that echoed John's message of hope and perseverance. The film sparked a renewed interest in John's work, introducing his story to a new generation. In his 80s, John embraced technology as a means of extending his reach. He launched a series of virtual reality experiences that allowed users to explore different aspects of resilience and personal growth. These immersive programs, which range from simulated survival scenarios to guided meditations in serene digital landscapes, became popular tools for therapy, team-building exercises, and personal development. John also became an unexpected icon in the growing field of longevity research. Scientists studying the effects of extreme stress on the human body were fascinated by John's remarkable health and vitality. Despite his ordeal, his participation in several long-term studies contributed to breakthroughs in understanding the body's stress response mechanisms and the potential for psychological resilience to impact physical health. As he approached his 90th year, John faced a personal challenge that tested the very principles he had spent a lifetime advocating. Sarah, his beloved wife and partner in all his endeavors, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. John approached this new chapter with the same grace and determination that had defined his life. He became Sarah's primary caregiver, using the experience to raise awareness about the challenges faced by families dealing with dementia. During this period, John wrote his final book, Love Beyond Memory, a poignant reflection on his relationship with Sarah and the nature of enduring love. The book became a comfort to millions dealing with similar situations, offering a perspective that found beauty and meaning even in the most challenging circumstances. On his 95th birthday, a global celebration was held in John's honor. People from around the world participated in a 24-hour live stream event, sharing stories of how John's example had impacted their lives. World leaders, celebrities, and ordinary individuals alike paid tribute to the man who had turned a tragedy into a lifetime of inspiration. As the celebration concluded, John made a surprise appearance via holographic projection. Despite his advanced age, his eyes still sparkled with the same determination and zest for life that had carried him through his darkest hours. He addressed the global audience with words that would be remembered for generations. "My friends, my family, citizens of this beautiful world," he began, his voice strong and clear. 95 years ago, I took my first breath in this life. 70 years ago, I fought for every breath in the confines of a coffin. And every day since then, I have treasured each breath as a gift and an opportunity. He paused, his holographic image seeming to make eye contact with millions around the globe. Life will bury us all at some point. With problems, with fears, with doubts. But remember, as long as you draw breath, you have the power to dig yourself out. To reach for the light. To not just survive, but to thrive and to help others do the same. I stand before you today, not as a man who cheated death, but as one who embraced life in all its complexity. My journey taught me that our greatest strengths often lie dormant until we face our greatest challenges. So do not fear the dark moments. They are but opportunities for your inner light to shine brightest. As John's words echoed around the world, people listening felt a collective surge of emotion. His message, honed over a lifetime of experience and shared with unwavering conviction, resonated deeply. It was a call to action, a reminder of the resilience inherent in every human spirit. In the days and weeks that followed, the John Williams effect swept across the globe. People everywhere were inspired to face their challenges head-on, to reach out to others in need, and to find purpose in adversity. Acts of kindness and courage multiplied, creating a ripple effect of positive change. John's legacy had transcended the remarkable story of his survival. He had become a symbol of the very best of humanity, resilience, compassion, and the unquenchable desire to make a positive impact on the world. As John Williams peacefully passed away just shy of his 100th birthday, the world mourned not just the loss of a great man, but celebrated a life that had touched millions. His final resting place, by his own request, was marked with a simple headstone that read, "Here lies John Williams. He lived." Those three simple words encapsulated a life that had started in darkness but had illuminated the world. John's story, his teachings, and his indomitable spirit continued to inspire long after he was gone, a lasting testament to the power of one individual to change the world through unwavering hope, relentless determination, and boundless love for life and humanity.